This is the GEEKOM XT12 Pro, and it's officially the most powerful mini PC I've ever used, as well as the most beautiful. I mean, just look at that gorgeous aluminum. Hubba hubba. This thing is so powerful, we should actually be calling it a mini workstation instead of a mini PC, which is exactly why I wanted to review it before I started selling it in my repair shop. Because before I sell anything at my shop, I have to make sure it meets the standards of
the greatest technician that's ever lived.
And mini PCs like this one have become the biggest seller in my shop when it comes to desktop replacements, since the specs and price of even a low-end mini PC are just enough for the average consumer. And of course, everyone loves the power-saving small form factor compared to the big power-hungry box that it's replacing. But I've struggled to find one that can meet the needs of my customers that aren't just average users, but power users. Specifically the ones that use CPU-demanding software and require the powerful hardware that can keep up with it. And that's where I'm hoping the GEEKOM XT12 Pro can come in. Because in addition to having more ports than the entire East Coast, this tiny box of wonders packs an insanely powerful 12th Gen i9 12900H, which by itself is impressive, but wait until you see just how easy it is to open it up and access the upgradable components. Just unscrew the 4 Phillips screws that you can never lose because they stay in the case, and you have access to all these goodies, which include 2 DIMMs of 32GB DDR4-3200MHz RAM, which you can upgrade to 64GB, a 1TB PCIe Gen 4 NVMe in the 2280 slot with a silicone pad so it can use the top case as a heatsink, which is pretty clever, a Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.2 card that's underneath it, right next to an empty slot for a 2242 SATA SSD, and after removing 2 more screws, you can flip it over so you can access the heatsink and fan if you ever need to clean the swamp gooch and change the thermal paste, which also makes this one of the easiest devices I've ever worked on. Nice. The ability to expand storage and RAM are huge factors in whether I'd consider this to a client, as is the fact that this comes with a 3-year warranty, and everyone knows I love having a warranty. Now let's check those ports. In the front, you have a 3.5 audio jack and 2 USB 3.2 Gen 2s, with one that supports power delivery, which will prove to be incredibly useful later in this video. And on the sides, you have the intake vents, but the back is where the magic happens, because they somehow managed to cram a 2.5 gigabit port, the DC jack, 2 HDMI 2.0 ports, a USB 3.2 and 2.0, and 2 USB 4 Gen 3 Type-Cs that support power delivery and an eGPU connection. Woo! Did you catch all that? These ports are also a huge selling factor, as most mini PCs will sacrifice ports to get a smaller form factor. Oh, and let's not forget the Kensington lock, which would have come in handy when I stepped away from filming to help a customer. But at least Lupe has proved this can fit in your pocket. Well, now that we've seen the guts, the real test is to see how it performs. So I gave this the full wife's boyfriend treatment and took it back to my home office with the intention of using it in place of my current PC, which has a 5800X with 64GB of DDR4. Because a powerful man requires a powerful computer, and if this sleek box of beauty can hold up to my multitasking, then it can hold up to anything my customers can throw at it. So in go my wireless keyboard, mouse, HDMI, Ethernet, and power plug. Good boy. And just to give you a size comparison, my tiny raccoon-like fingers require a tiny mouse, and just look how big this is compared to the XT12 Pro. And even better, sized up against a 120mm fan. This is nuts. But let's get to work. Thankfully, this shipped with the 22H2 version of Windows 11 Pro, so I was able to set up a local account instead of a Microsoft account without having to jump through hoops like in 23H2. And now that we're in, the first thing I want to do is test the temps, since this is the biggest concern with mini PCs. Now, with the XT12 Pro, GEEKOM has made energy efficiency and noise levels a priority. This means the fan won't be running full blast like on some other mini PCs I've tested. And sure enough, after running a CPU-Z benchmark, the fan was only briefly audible, though the trade-off of being this quiet is the temps did spike to force throttling. But during my month of using this for heavy multitasking, I never experienced prolonged throttling, and temps hovered around the 60C mark during heavy usage, which is well within range for a 12th Gen i9. All this while the fan was quieter than my PC idling 6 feet away. This is a major design difference between GEEKOM and other manufacturers, and it's a huge plus for users that prefer quiet machines. And if you're like me and don't mind a bit more fan noise, you can boot into BIOS and put the fan on performance performance mode. But even here, I only heard the fan kick on for a few seconds when I was doing something really CPU intensive, like rendering an audio file. Let's get back to that CPU-Z benchmark though. One of the main goals of my testing was to make myself feel inadequate and see how this tiny PC, that's smaller than just one of my fans, held up against my own PC. And compared against my 105 watt 5800X, this 35 watt i9 nearly matched the multi-core score and actually outperformed the single-core score in every benchmark program I ran. This was especially evident outside of the benchmark when I was comparing render times in Adobe Audition, where my computer took 16 seconds to render the same audio file that the XT12 Pro rendered in a little over 5 seconds. That's a huge difference. But when it comes to gaming, make no mistake, this is not a gaming machine. But modern AAA games are definitely playable. Here in CS2, I averaged around 100 FPS, which is more than enough to flex my 1.6 skills from 20 years ago. You can also expect it to run Minecraft and Roblox without an issue. But the integrated GPU is more than enough for running up to 4 monitors via the 2 USB-C ports and 2 HDMI ports. And with a portable monitor, mouse, and keyboard, you can turn this PC into a mobile workstation that only takes up one power outlet thanks to that USB-A port with power delivery I mentioned earlier. Or you can be like me and just use it as an extra monitor for productivity, which this computer eats up like baby food. Seriously, I've been going ham on this thing for nearly a month and it hasn't skipped a beat a single time. I've even found myself using this more than my regular PC since everything just felt more snappier with the i9 compared to my 5800X. And because of how much it's impressed me, this has officially earned my mushroom stamp of approval to be sold in my store to customers that need something powerful, small, and quiet. And sold for how much, you ask? Well, the MSRP of this is $699, which might seem high for a mini PC, but I want to stress the fact that this is a mini workstation that focuses on being powerful, low noise, energy saving, and absolutely gorgeous with a huge port selection. So it's not just your average mini PC. And I would recommend this in a heartbeat to anyone looking for a powerful mini PC for productivity. So if you want to grab one for yourself, click the link in my description and use my discount code to save yourself some money on this mini workstation with massive power.